And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Thursday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Very proudly, of course, presented daily by Motley Rice, motleyrice.com. You can head to jbandgoldwatershow.com and make sure you download our app, the JB and Goldwater app. It's free, and that way you can take us anywhere you go. You can listen, watch while you're on the road, while you're at work, wherever it may be. That app also will allow you to keep up with the high school football scores on Friday nights. And tomorrow night is another Friday night that David Shelton's going to talk about at 1:05 this afternoon with the Post and Courier. But before him, coming up at about 12:10, so 8 minutes or so from now, David Cloninger with the Post and Courier. He's going to pop in. A lot to get to with South Carolina. Obviously, there's a big one this weekend between the hedges. South Carolina makes their way to Athens. 2 years ago, they went there and won. Can they pull off another miracle-type upset? We'll see. But DC's got the scoop on that. Also, a major basketball tournament announced in Rock Hill, so we'll get some quick thoughts on that one if you haven't heard about it. DC will give you that news here in just a little bit. And yesterday, the Gamecock baseball schedule came out, and the first two weekends are a doozy. And that's coming off of the Texas and Clemson series in the preseason. So South Carolina baseball next year is going to have to be pretty good, pretty early if they want to get off to a good start. At 12:35 today, Matt Zemek with TrojansWire.com will pop in here on our program and tell us about what's happening with the other USC out there on the West Coast. Obviously, Clay Helton has been let go. And what does that search look like at this point in time? We'll talk about some of the Pac-12 stuff with him as well. I know a lot of people around here don't care. And for that matter, I don't either. But it's a major story in college football that will have a domino effect somehow when it comes to this coaching search. And so we're going to get Matt in here. We've had him before. He's really good. And I think that all of you will really enjoy this conversation. Scott Glaze at 1:35 this afternoon. But before we go any further, good afternoon to my friend Darren Goldwater.
You know, I saw that the Gamecocks released their baseball schedule, and the first thing that crossed my mind, I even forgot to make a graphic for it today, because the only thing that crossed my mind is I'm still getting basketball releases, and I just got a baseball. It's like week 3 of the football season. I'm not going to think about baseball yet. I love it. I love you. I'm not thinking about baseball. I'm still getting these basketball releases.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this baseball schedule's out kind of early. I feel like it's usually a little bit later in the fall, but the SEC wasn't waiting around. They dished that sucker in a hurry, and usually the non-con is finalized before the conference is, but they didn't have to wait that long to do it, Darren. Yeah. So there you go. Tennessee and Vanderbilt, by the way, are the first 2 weekends for Carolina. I think the Vols are at home and they're on the road at Vandy, maybe, or maybe they're at I can't remember. But we'll talk to David about that coming up here.
I didn't even look closely. I was like, you want me to focus on, like, when does it even start? Let's get through football.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's pump the brakes on that, though. We always want football to last longer than it does. And week 3 is already upon us here in the state of South Carolina. Tonight, there will be football to watch if you are anxious to do so as well. There's a Thursday night NFL game as that part of the schedule cranks up, and it's Darren's Washington former Redskins football team. They'll host the Giants, both 0-1. Washington is a 3.5-point favorite at FedEx Field in Landover, 8:20 on the NFL Network. And then there's also a college football game tonight as well. So if you want to double TV it and you care about watching Ohio and Louisiana, go for it. That one's on ESPN. The Raging Cajuns are 19.5-point favorites in that game. But tomorrow night, though, we kind of hit on some of this yesterday, Darren. Tomorrow night is another barometer game for the ACC because Louisville welcomes UCF to town, and the Knights are 6.5-point favorites in that game at Cardinal Stadium. So Louisville could get the Atlantic Coast Conference off to a pretty good weekend, or they could get them off on the wrong foot real quick. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. But Gus Malzahn's going to get a crack at the ACC.
So speaking of the ACC, if Florida State loses to Wake Forest, then again, they're underdogs. It'll be the first 0-3 start for the Seminoles since the 70s, since Bobby Bowden's first season as the head coach of the Seminoles. So This is a big weekend, right? It's also huge for Wake because Wake could start 3-0 and then we'll see what happens. But then you've got Miami as a favorite over Michigan State. I don't love Louisville's odds tomorrow night, but there are plenty of games out there for the ACC like Virginia Tech and West Virginia. We talked about it yesterday. It's an opportunity once again for the ACC to say, hang on, pump the brakes on. We're sliding in the wrong direction and we're the worst Power 5 conference in history.
Yeah, it is an opportunity. There's no doubt, and we'll see what they do with it. Craig's got that question, is Scott Satterfield in trouble at Louisville? I think he is. If they don't make it to a bowl game this year, I think he is. I don't think that they'll can him, but I think he would certainly be on the hot seat if, a 5-7 type campaign or something like that, or even a little bit better. I think they'll be looking at Scott Satterfield saying, what are we doing here? We need to win. And if you go back a couple of months or more than that, quite a few months, remember when he was in the mix for the Carolina job and there was, I haven't talked to him. Well, yeah, maybe I did talk to him. And, it was strange. It was a strange turn of events up there. And there was a lot of Louisville people literally in that moment that were like, look, man, if you don't want to be here, you need to leave. You need to tell us the truth. And it just got a little dicey. And that can go away when you win games. But when you ain't winning games, that doesn't go away. That sticks in the crawl of your fan base. And it might be right now. Louisville, of course, opened the season with that loss to Ole Miss. They beat Eastern Kentucky last weekend. So we don't really know a lot about them. Everybody expected them to lose to Ole Miss. They did in fine form by almost 20 points without Lane Kiffin on the sidelines that night as well. So tomorrow we'll start to learn a little bit more about them and where they are in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Yeah, Vegas is already telling you that they don't think that Ole Miss game was that much of an aberration. If they've got Central Florida favored by almost a touchdown in that game, I don't think Satterfield is in trouble this year. But if it is a bad year, if it really does tumble, then yeah, I'm with you. Then there are eyebrows and there are questions that are going to be asked because it doesn't help that they're questioning him. And to that point, I mentioned this yesterday. I don't understand the whole getting angry at the coach when you're exploring certain options. I'm not mad as a Penn State fan if James Franklin explores Southern Cal. Why wouldn't he? I don't get that thing, but that's another topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, if you got to protect your interests. I mean, if you or I were approached by somebody else in our field to take a similar or the same type job and it was better for my family or better for your family, we would have to just be understanding of what the situation is. I mean, that's just life. But sports, of course, is certainly a little bit different, and we understand that. Again, Matt Zemek ahead at 12:35. The Pac-12 has seemingly had a pretty good start to the season overall, headlined by Oregon's win last weekend. We'll talk to him about all that, but certainly going to talk to him about the situation at Southern Cal and where they're going to go next in replacing Clay Helton. And one of the questions I have is the guy who's taking over, Dante Williams, is he a legitimate candidate or not I wouldn't think so, but we'll get to that. David Shelton at 105, Scott Glaze at 135, but right now, David Cloninger with the Posted Courier. And so DC, we've been doing this a long time with him, and Darren and I have been fighting week in and week out to figure out where can we put DC? Where can we put, because it's Steve Fink's fault. He's the one that schedules all these interviews starting at 11 a.m. until 2 o'clock every afternoon, and that's David's job, is to cover the Gamecocks. So luckily we've got him today. What's up, man?
Not too much, man. But, yeah, you're right about them player interviews. I mean, I request players, and they give me some kind of crap reason, like, he can't come, he's got class. I'm like, what are you guys reading over there? All right, is this a football team or what? But, you know, hey, whatever. We'll get past all that. You know, it's an impasse. But, yeah, we'll see.
I mean, did Fink never pay attention to how they do things at North Carolina?
I tried to argue with him very polite. I said, you don't understand. It's me.
Right.
And he was like, well, you can't do it. I was like, all right. You're off the Christmas card list, buddy.
Well, if you cover the North Carolina Tar Heels, you won't have that problem. They don't go to class up there, remember?
No. They do. It's a fine academic institution.
Oh. That's what I heard.
It's hard to get into. I know that much because
Yeah, well, you know, I didn't apply. Didn't care to. Hey, before we get to some,
man, I mean, all you got to do is look down your nose a few times, and that's half the admission survey. Anyway, what's on your mind?
Yeah, not much. They're an Ole Miss. Hey, before we get to football, DC, your hometown of Rock Hill is going to be hosting a pretty neat event coming up on my birthday, as a matter of fact, December the 12th, a new basketball event headlined by South Carolina and Florida State. What have you learned about the, I've already forgotten the name, No Room for Racism Classic?
Yeah, well, the No Room for Racism Classic, it gets that tag because that's it's not an official city nickname for Rock Hill, but it's one of them. It's on all of the city limit signs when you're coming in on the various highways, and that was a thing thought of by the former mayor, Doug Eccles. He was in office for close to 20 years, and he thought that would be something to really promote, and obviously it is. But, you know, Rock Hill's been building that. They took that Football City USA nickname that they earned when all those guys were in the NFL, and they started expanding on that. They built a new BMX park. They built a bunch of soccer fields, tennis courts, and started getting a lot of the AAU circuits involved. This is kind of their latest venture. What it is just going to be 4 college basketball games, and it's going to be at the Rock Hill Event Center. And the headliner is going to be South Carolina versus Florida State. So that's big time. I mean, you want to have that non-conference event, you know, for RPI's sake, for Florida State and South Carolina's thing. And obviously, if Florida State's got to take a plane up here and USC's just got to get on the bus and go an hour up the road, that's a benefit, right?
Right.
My main thing is when I first heard about this was months ago, I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. You going to play it at the Coliseum? And they said, no, we're going to play it at the Event Center. And I said, the Event Center seats 1,700. They said, yeah, that's right. Oh,
wow.
Okay. I mean, it's going to be on national TV, and that's cool. But 1,700 people? I'm just kind of wondering what the gate is, you know, for the schools to make the trip up there. You know, it's not like either of these teams have to fight to be on TV. So there's really only 2 arenas that can host this kind of thing in Rock Hill, and one of them is Winthrop Coliseum, which seats about 6,000. But then again, Winthrop, I'm sure, would not want to share its arena if they're not going to be playing in it, which I totally get. That's perfectly fine. So Winthrop's going to be playing at the Event Center in their game. Clinton Junior College, which is also in Rock Hill, will be playing in a game there, and SC State will be playing in a game there. So going to be a nice event. I mean, it's on TV. It's against a big-time opponent. I just don't really understand why it's got to be at a 1,700-seat arena. But if it's Rock Hill's thing, then it's like, well, you had 2 choices, and really one of those choices wasn't feasible because Winthrop Coliseum was probably never going to be on the table.
So the schedule, that it actually starts that Friday with High Point and South Carolina State, and then Saturday Winthrop Carver College matchup, and then the double dip Sunday, Clinton, as you mentioned, and Edward Walters. That's a JUCO matchup, and then the Gamecocks and the Noles will be the nightcap whenever they set the official time. Tickets are available October the 11th And you can go to ticketreturn.com for that, or noroomforracismclassic.com. So have you any word on, I'm assuming, is it going to be ESPN? I'm just kind of assuming here that's going to end up carrying this.
I think it probably will end up being that. They're not going to put this on one of the smaller networks. And I'm assuming a big reason why they're not concerned about the gate is because they've got a major TV network behind this.
Right.
So, during that time of year, especially when you don't have the football Sundays and college football is off at that time, you're always looking for these non-conference basketball games. That's why Thanksgiving weekend is such a big time for tournaments.
Yeah.
So that's what it's for. I'm sure they're going to have some major TV cameras in there. But it's like, well, that's great. Just don't take up too much of the room because there's not that much of it to go around as it is.
It looks good. The Times Cornhole has been up there. And it's been nationally televised. I mean, it's a small, tiny place, but it looks good.
Yeah, it's pretty much a brand new facility. I mean, this is all part of, Rock Hill's, desire and saying, we're going to really push the sports aspect because, in a couple of years, Panthers training camp will be there. I went to church growing up with the guy whose land is where the Panthers site is going to be. So, once that came down, I was like, oh, okay, great. And David Tepper, the Panthers owner, is very, very into making it a true two states, one team, I guess marketing capability. The Panthers have always marketed themselves as that, but really from where I'm from, I know a lot of other people in the state were like, that ain't our team. That's Charlotte's bunch. We don't have nothing to do with them. But David Tepper is trying to eliminate that, and he thinks that University of South Carolina can really help with that. He is very, very in tune to helping USC and having USC help the Panthers. And I say that because if it comes to Clemson, it's not that same relationship.
Oh, that's interesting. I did catch Matt Rule last week in an interview and saying the exact same thing. We represent both North and South Carolina, so obviously that line is making its way through the organization, and they have a bunch of Gamecocks on the team up there as well, which helps, especially when you draft J.C. Horn as the first defensive player in the NFL draft, and he starts for you. That will help too. All right, J.C. Horn played football last year and the year before. Matter of fact, he was on the team 2 years ago when they beat Georgia, DC. I don't know if that's going to happen again this year, but we're going to find out coming up Saturday night. It was his counterpart, though, Izzy McQuamu, that had the big day, 3 picks, 2 of those caused by Javon Kinlaw. Probably going to need 3 picks again, at least on Saturday night, to give yourselves a chance between the hedges, 7 o'clock on ESPN. You've got a column in the paper today. I want everybody to go read it. You can head to postandcourier.com and check this out. But it's titled, "A Look at Zeb Nolan and What His Role as Starter Says About the Gamecocks QB Room." I want people to read the article, obviously. But if you could summarize, what does that say about the Gamecocks QB Room?
Well, that's actually just a piece that I've been putting in our new subscriber-only newsletter. This is just kind of a free copy to let people know what the newsletter has in it. If you subscribe now, it's a 2-week free trial. There is another new newsletter right now. The one that's for free on the site right now I actually wrote a couple weeks ago. But to answer your question, it was the case of you've got 2 stories here. It really is kind of cool that a 24-year-old graduate assistant can go from hanging a whistle around his neck and breaking down film and getting coffee for all the coaches. He can go from that to being an SEC starting quarterback in the span of a week. I mean, that's how long it took him to really win the job in practice, even though it was a couple of weeks before he actually could play. So that's kind of cool. Disney movie. Hey, terrific. But it also says, let me get this straight. You're a Division I football team in the SEC. Your quarterback room was so bad, a graduate assistant could get the job in a week.
Right.
And that's also true. Nothing against the talent in that room, but, they're there as backups for a reason. And when Luke Doty went down, it was a case of like, well, who do you got? You've got some guys, but none of them are tested, and they're not going to get tested till you put them out there. Do you really want to do that, or do you really want to take an advantage that you have for just this tiny window of a guy who's been in college for 5 years and who has played in a lot of games? So they said, well, get him out there and see what he looks like. And because he had a pretty much immediate command of the playbook, and because he'd been there before, Zeb Nolan got the job. And you guys have seen it. The first 2 weeks, he's done what I think we all expected him to do. It's one of those where they say, listen, we're going to put enough around you to win the game. So don't try to be a superstar. Just don't lose the game. And I think I'm right here. He's only thrown one interception, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was because Jaheim Bell didn't turn his head around.
Right.
Through to the spot where Jaheim was supposed to be, Jaheim ran the wrong route. I was like, oh, man, that just drives you crazy as a quarterback, but you can't say anything, you know. So he's done well, but it is one of those cases like when you're playing a defensive line like this at Georgia, when you look at some of the other talent you're going to have to play, you really want to get Luke Doty back as soon as possible. Well, this week, I honestly thought Luke Doty would start last week. I really did. But, you know, the soreness wouldn't allow him to do that. So now you look at this week, and he's much better. He's practicing. Okay, great. Is he going to start? No. And I don't know if he'll play. And a lot of that is, well, you can say it's soreness. Maybe that's true. Or you could say, do you really want to put him out there for his first game action of the year when he's coming off a sprained foot against those guys?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. So they're going to see how it goes this week. Maybe he gets to play, maybe he doesn't. But it is, to me, the wise decision. And nothing against Zeb, but saying if you can keep Doty out until next week, then do it. There's a way for South Carolina to be in this game and potentially win it. But most what I think is going to happen, they'll play competitive and they'll fight hard for a half probably, and then it's just they're going to start wearing down. Because Georgia's just got too many weapons for the defense to completely stop. And with this offense, it's like, if that running game don't get on track early, which it has not the past two games, it's going to be a long day. Because if you tell them that they can just tee off back there on Zeb Nolan, he simply does not have the mobility to escape it.
No, he doesn't, and they don't have anybody behind him. If there was ever a time where you would see Jason Brown, it would have been last week when Zeb was struggling, and he wasn't remotely close to going into the football game, and that should tell everybody exactly what you've just said. This QB room is very slim, and Luke Doty is needed very bad, but this might not be the weekend that we see him. I'm with you. I've heard similar things, David. I don't think he's going to step on the field. So yesterday, Marcus Satterfield is meeting with the media, and look, I from the conversations that I personally have had over the last, I'd say, month or so, but definitely over the last couple of weeks, David, with sources close to and within the program, they all say the same thing. Man, he's really sharp, and he really knows offense. He really understands it. Just praises. And then, but I know that a lot of fans have had some questions about how maybe this offense has been called, the inconsistency, I think is a polite way to put it, of the offensive line. And then yesterday he was asked about a lot of this stuff, and he kind of stood his ground, right? He said, we feel like we're pretty on point. What do you make of those comments based on what we've seen through 8 quarters of football?
Well, it is worth it to point out two things, Jamie. One is that he thought he was going to have Luke Doty. And that changes a lot of how this offense is run, because when you get into the pass blocking that we've seen, where it's pretty much just stand up, block your man, and don't really move, if there is a guy coming free, if they do break penetration of the line, Luke Doty's got the wheels to move out of it. Well, he doesn't have that right now. So it is a case of saying, well, what can you do? Do you have to revamp the whole thing? You can't really realistically do that. So that's one point. The second point is this. The running game has not been strong overall. Okay? But it's looked good when it's had to, specifically in the second half. So it's a case of like, well, you call it whether it's wearing them down, you call it whether it's, okay, now we're going to go for it and use this play. Whatever the case is, it's worked eventually. You just don't like how it looks early. So you do say that and like, okay, what's the problem here? You've got the personnel. 4 offensive line starters played last year. All of those running backs, with the exception of Zaquandre White, played last year. Kevin Harris rushed for 1,100 yards last year. Why aren't those guys getting it done? And you say if you've got the personnel, it's got to be the scheme, right? Well, there's some truth to that, because looking to me, like, boy, when they try to run around the edges, these tight ends and receivers aren't holding their blocks really very well at all. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to pass block on a run play where you just kind of sit there in your stance and hold the guy off, that ain't gonna work. You got to move. You got to give them a hole to run through instead of just trying to clear people out of the way. So there is the case of, I understand the frustration and saying, well, people it's just not happening right now. You do, as an OC and a play caller, have to say, we're patient. We're going to stick with it. We know this is going to work. But you also are thinking you got to have the patience and discipline to not second guess yourself. Yeah. And he talked about that yesterday. And it's just a case of like, well, to me, there are some glaring problems. You knew East Carolina was going to blitz because that's all they do.
Right.
And yet USC seemed very unprepared for it at times. So I'm like, I saw this on film. Did you not watch the same one? I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah.
And it's very disturbing to see a guy coming free when you knew that they were going to do it, and you know that you've got a statue back there under center. So that can be a problem. But now you look at this Georgia defensive line who is all over Clemson's quarterback. I'm just going to call him DJ because I still haven't figured out how to pronounce his last name. But they were all over him, just all over him. And what a part of that was Clemson pretty much abandoned the run, so Georgia knew it could stand back there and tee off on him. USC is not going to do that because they can't afford to. So looking at this game on Saturday, I think that, pretty much we all know that the chances of USC losing and probably losing by 2 or 3 touchdowns is great. But it's not 100%. If they can get the run game started, if they can just kind of start knocking them off the ball a few times, complete a couple of quick passes, well, now you can do it. Because with their offense scored 3 points against Clemson.
Right.
I mean, the touchdown was a pick 6, remember?
Mm-hmm.
So you look at that offense and say, well, JT Daniels isn't going to play, and frankly, I don't think he's that good anyway. Stetson Bennett looked real good last week against UAB, but how good can he be?
Yeah.
And he's been practicing this week, but he's got a lower back injury.
Right.
So it's like, maybe there could be a lot of trade-off here. It may be ugly football. It may be a whole lot of 3 and outs, but if USC can get it in that kind of game, keep it close, there are 3 factors that could turn this the Gamecocks' way. Again, it's slim chances, but it's a chance. The first factor, you have to realize that you should never underestimate the ability of Kirby Smart to screw up a championship chance.
That's true.
They got a great team this year. They could go all the way. But Kirby has not shown that he can take advantage of that the past few years. I think we're all agreed on that. Second, the history of this series. For whatever reason, it's usually close. And that leads into the third point. If this is a 3-point game or so in the fourth quarter, the Gamecocks got Parker White.
Yep.
And as much as some people still, like to talk about him and all this, he's not that. I mean, look, he's great if you give him what he can do.
Yeah.
Specifically from 49 yards in. I would trust that kid with my life from 49 yards in. It's when you put a 5 in front of that we got a problem.
Hey, and
got a 3-point game at the end. You've got that guy, and he's shown he can get it done.
Well, and to back up your point, DC, I know when I say this, people are like, yeah, but they probably can't. Well, here's my counterpoint to what I'm about to say. Yeah, but they have to, which is run the football. And here's why. Because in the last 11 games, Georgia leads this series slimmest of slims, 6-5. But anytime that Gamecock running backs have run for over 100 yards, they're 5-1 in those games. 5-1 in those games. And those 5 wins, they've averaged 198 yards on the ground. They just have to figure out a way to do it to give themselves a chance. Let me flip it over to the other side, though, because they're not going to be able to do that without the defense doing something special. This is the real barometer game for them, clearly. More mad props DCU for having some guys who could play. Don't want to take anything away from Eastern Illinois. Respect both of the programs, but they're not Georgia. And Carolina has seemingly looked much better, crisp, clean, tackling DC, all these things you've talked about, all this stuff, things that they've been missing for a while. They're playing fast. They're attacking the quarterback. They're attacking everything. But as they go into this game, when we'll really get a good gauge on them, How good are they?
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, there's always been that kind of case that the winner of this game usually goes on to have a better season. Now, Georgia's got some pretty strong games left, and you know USC's schedule. So it is a case of saying, like, well, look, the main thing I think people want to see, because I'm pretty sure that everybody, even the most optimistic USC superfan, knows they probably ain't going to win this weekend.
Right.
You want to see competition. You want to see them fighting hard for 60 minutes. You want to see them not giving up. And that would be fine. I mean, it's like I was I was writing it at halftime really last week, and pretty much halfway through the third quarter that, yeah, the honeymoon's over. And we all knew it was going to end sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is it's ending with a thud, because it's not that you're losing to a team on the road. That can be understood. It's how bad you look doing it. Well, they won that game. So, okay, throw that away. This week, I don't know if I'd say it in the same terminology, because it's like, look, if you still show that you've got the gumption to compete, even when you're badly outmanned, that's going to say a whole lot about what Shane Beamer's doing here. Last week, it was a concern, one, because East Carolina's not that good. Now, I thought they'd lose still, just because it was on the road and because ECU was hyping this up. But then I get to the game and I'm watching East Carolina. I'm like, man, you guys just aren't very good at all.
Mm-hmm.
And USC's just playing down to you. Not that USC's stocked with talent, but they're playing down to you right now. So they ended up winning the game. So everything was fine. They're 2-0. Hey, great. But this week's going to tell a lot about, okay, where's the direction this program going? Because as great as it's been for 9 months since Shane was hired and turning around the culture, energizing the fan base, energizing the kids, making sure that they do have a family atmosphere, great culture, all that kind of stuff, it gets tested when you lose.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but there's a reason that point spread's as big as it is. I mean, Georgia's better. That's just the long and short of it. But sometimes the better team don't win. It could happen. It could. Not a great chance, but it could.
Gamecock fans certainly hoping for that. DC, before we let you run, from what I understand, the new newsletter, the subscription through the Post and Courier has been going pretty well. For folks that haven't subscribed, tell them how they can do it.
Yeah, just go. It's on our website. Just go to a Gamecocks Now off of the Post and Courier website, and you can be able to sign up for a 2-week free trial. I link it all the time and on my Twitter account as well. Yep. But like I said, 2-week free trial. So if you just want to see what it is, I usually put out 4 or 5 per week. There'll be pregame, there'll be postgame, there'll be Gamecocks in the NFL on Tuesdays. You know, there'll be all kinds of stuff. We're doing a mailbag feature where you can write in and ask anything you want with me, and I'll apply in that forum. So just check it out, you know, and also I'm open to suggestion if there's anything you want to hear, you know, because I try to include a lot, but mostly right now it's about football. But, of course, you know, baseball SEC schedule just got released the other day.
Yeah.
That's always worth talking about. So, you know, it's got a little bit of everything. Just check it out. Like I said, 2-week free trial, and then if you want to keep going, I'd be more than happy to keep writing it.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. As somebody described it to me the other day, is DC is a little bit more of a free bird. He just whatever's coming out is coming out, and I like that. Unfiltered David Cloninger. I'm a fan.
Well, you know, you still got to filter it a little.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some times where I'm like, oh yeah, you can't say that.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know,
it is a little more where there's a way you write a newspaper story and there's a way you write a column, like in quotes, where pretty much I can use the word I a lot more. Here's what I think. Here's what I know. Here's what I saw, you know, stuff like that. And that's what it's all about. And then just, I mean, shoot, when it's Georgia week, you always remember some of the great Georgia wins, great Georgia losses that you've ever seen. And I've seen a whole lot of them. It's always worth revisiting.
Have a safe trip this weekend, bud. Thank you so much for popping in. Great stuff as always. And I hope that late Saturday night you're in the press box for a long time talking about another miracle between the hedges.
I don't know, man. It's awful hot in that press box, but we'll see what we can do. At least they got a lot of Coca-Cola in that close to Atlanta.
Yeah, and people bark at you up there. It's really strange, but it's you know, at the end of the day, if you win, you win. You can handle the dog noises.
Well, there's always a way to handle all that kind of stuff. We don't have to get into that.
No. Thanks, David. See you, bud.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
There you go, David Cloninger with the Post and Courier. All right, time for a quick timeout. When we return, Matt Zemek with TrojansWire.com. He's going to pop in. What's going on out there at Southern Cal? Do they have a new coach yet? No, they don't.
Or are they stealing Penn State's?
Oh, yeah, James Franklin. We're going to talk to him about all that stuff. Hang tight. Right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need the perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity financed a new loan, subject to lender approval.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work. And two others you probably don't think much about, stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
Motley Rice LLC is a law firm with international reach, but it hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for people harmed by products including asbestos and talc exposure, medical drugs and devices, and also catastrophic injuries and auto recalls, including dangerous Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. Visit motleyrice.com. Thank you, Motley Rice, for supporting the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
You're listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
12:38 Thursday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, and we're going to hop in the Stokes Volkswagen Atlas and drive all the way to the West Coast to find Matt Zemek with TrojansWire.com. Hey, bud, thanks for hanging on for a few minutes. Sorry we're late. How you doing?
All right. Thanks for having me back.
So what's going on out that way? Anything, any news or?
Well, we're going to just strap in for like a 3-month ride because, that's what happens when you fire a coach after week 2. It's really not how you're supposed to do it in this industry. But given all the circumstances, this move had to be done under the current circumstances. So people might wonder, why did we get here? How did we get here in terms of, firing a coach 2 weeks into the season? Well, first off, Clay Helton went 5-7 at USC in 2018. And he should have been fired then. But previous athletic director Lynn Swann didn't do it. And that's really the bigger context here, that USC has had a run of bad athletic directors over the past decade. Mike Garrett in 2010 with the NCAA sanctions did not handle that situation well. And then Clay Helton became USC's permanent head coach in 2015 because then athletic director Pat Hayden, who was between Garrett and Lynn Swann, he elevated Helton from an interim position to permanent head coach before the 2015 Pac-12 championship game against Stanford. And that Stanford team had Christian McCaffrey. So it made sense to force Helton to win that game as an audition for the permanent job. But Pat Hayden, Helton had just beaten UCLA to win the Pac-12 South Division title and earn a berth in that Pac-12 title game against Stanford. Hayden thought that was enough to convince him that Helton deserved to be permanent head coach. But really, the smarter move was to force Helton to beat Stanford and win the Pac-12. Then you give him the keys to the program. Then you make him permanent head coach. But Pat Hayden did not do it that way. Stanford smokes USC by 19 points. The game was never close, and USC's been stuck with Clay Helton ever since. And as I said, Lynn Swann didn't fire him in 2018 when he had a chance, when USC was a sub 500 program. So Mike Bone, the current athletic director, he comes in from Cincinnati in 2019. And so USC was 8-4 in the regular season, went to the Holiday Bowl. That's not what people expect out here at Southern California. But it was a 3-game improvement from the previous season. And USC's president, Carol Folt, has been supportive of Helton, which means that she really doesn't understand how important it is to have a really strong football program. So Bone was kind of boxed in by the politics and the leadership at the highest levels of the USC administration. So he didn't have the best chance in 2019, also didn't have a great chance in 2020 because USC went 5-1. Now the Trojans looked ugly, frankly, on the field, but they nevertheless went 5-1. Not the most convenient, obvious time, plus all the pandemic complications to fire a coach. So this was Bone's opening. This was a moment when he felt empowered. He felt that no one else was in the administration was going to get in his way. And the optics of fans leaving the Los Angeles Coliseum throughout the second half, Stanford led USC by 29. And you might look at that final score. If you didn't watch the game, if you didn't stay up late, you might say 42-28. Well, that's not embarrassing. No, it was embarrassing. It was a 29-point game. This was a Stanford team that very nearly got shut out by Kansas State in week 1. And there was a thought process within the USC community in the offseason that, the offense might continue to struggle since Clay Helton is incompetent, but his hire as defensive coordinator, Todd Orlando, maybe that side of the ball is going to be really strong. And in week 1 against San Jose State, that line of thought held up well. USC allowed only 7 points, got a pick 6, so essentially pitched what I call an adjusted shutout, 0 net points allowed. So the defense seemed to be on the right track. The defense had been dominating spring practices and summer practices. So there was a sense that even if the offense struggles, the defense can grind out a series of ugly wins. But that whole idea was destroyed by the Stanford game. So you have Mike Bone, donations to the athletic department are going down. You had fans flooding out of the Coliseum on national television, on Fox Sports. And then you have the fact that, the defense isn't going to bail out the offense this year. So you add all those things together, and he frankly had to make this move now rather than later.
Wow. It's amazing. If you had to guess, Matt, going back to when he was initially hired, because it doesn't sound like there was a ton of support amongst the fan base from day one, but if you had to guess what that support level may have been from the start, obviously it's been he won 21 games in his first 2 full years as head coach. So I would imagine it jumped up and then faded again. But overall, if you had to gauge it over the last few years, where would you think that support level would be, in your opinion, amongst the fan base?
Yeah, so, beating UCLA in 2015, that did win him a lot of goodwill. And keep this in mind about USC and interim coaches. 2 years before Clay Helton became an interim head coach, elevated to the permanent job, what did we have at USC? We had Ed Orgeron as the interim coach in 2013, and the Trojans didn't elevate him to the permanent job. Pat Hayden hired Steve Sarkisian to the head coaching job, who plucked him from Washington, which ironically is what enabled Chris Peterson to come to Washington and become the last Pac-12 team to reach the college football playoff in 2016. But anyway, USC was burned, or at least a lot of people in the community, in the program, felt burned by the fact that a good interim coach didn't get his chance to run the program. So that was part of the political picture in 2015. There was support for the idea of, hey, let's give an interim coach a chance after crushing arch rival UCLA. That UCLA game just really created a lot of goodwill. It's interesting. Bill Plaschke, the Los Angeles Times columnist, you probably know him from Around the Horn. Yep. He said that, Clay Helton, he said this weekend, after the loss to Stanford, that Mike Bohn needed to fire Clay Helton right away. And Mike Bohn did that. But it's interesting to note that back in 2015, after the UCLA game, Plaschke wrote a column. I looked this up. He wrote a column saying, make Helton the permanent head coach. Don't wait for the Stanford Pac-12 championship game. Do it right away. So really, that UCLA win as interim in 2015, it really won over a lot of people at USC. Now, I was saying, Pat Hayden needed to get a win over Stanford to do it, but a lot of people felt that win over UCLA was enough, and Bill Plaschke was one of those people.
Speaking of UCLA, with their start, did that in anybody's mind have an impact in this decision? Looking across town saying, whoa, wait a second here. That have an impact?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a factor. I think the other really big factor is Oregon beating Ohio State. I think if Oregon had lost to Ohio State, there was a sense that, all right, we can ride out this season. We'll get our guy at the end. We let Clay Helton have his farewell tour. But no, because Oregon beat Ohio State, that clearly marked Oregon as the king of the Pac-12, obviously the best program in the conference and going on an ascendant trajectory. And I'm sure Mike Bohn went, uh-oh, I got to stop this. I got to change the conversation right away. I can't be perceived as being weak or dithering in the face of, Mario Cristobal putting all the pieces together at Oregon. We know that Oregon didn't just kick Ohio State's butt, did it without Kayvon Thibodeau, best defensive player, top 5 projected NFL draft pick. So I'm sure Mike Bohn looked at that and went, you know what, I need to put the brakes on this thing right now. And it's also interesting, this is another small but piece of the puzzle, but something which probably contributed to his decision. ESPN selected Oregon, Arizona over USC, Oregon State for its preferred night game on September 25. Now, Oregon versus Arizona, that's going to be a 50-point game. That's going to be a total blowout. The fact that ESPN would select that game over USC sent a message about, ESPN does not want to show 50,000 empty seats at the Coliseum with Clay Helton coaching USC against Oregon State. That was definitely part of the optics and part of the accumulation of events in a 24-hour period on Saturday night and Sunday morning, which made Mike Bohn on Monday felt, yep, I got to do this now, not later, even though, a week 2 firing looks pretty bad on a national level.
I can hear the passion, obviously, is just exuding through. Is the fan base on cloud 9 because of this decision? Are they now of the belief, hey, we're about to be back? What's your feeling and the fan base's feeling right now?
Yeah, the fan base is emotionally exhausted. Like the USC fans over the past few years, especially like after 2019, it was already clear that this thing is not going to go back to normal. So, I mean, in 2019, the program was better than it was in 2018, but that's because the program hit rock bottom in 2018. So the last shred of a wait-and-see attitude among the fan base was in 2019. They were hoping that after 2018 bottomed out, that the program could become a 10-win program in 2019. But Clay Helton didn't come especially close to that standard. So I think 2 years ago, fans had basically given up. They were just saying, fire him, fire him, fire him. Like they had emotionally checked out. So in many ways, there was just a lot of relief. Like, oh, God, this era is finally over. So it's not so much kind of like a triumphant, we're on our way back. It's more about just relief after all the emotional exhaustion of the past few years. And I will say this, because people in and around USC were so surprised that Mike Bohn was this decisive and this proactive after the bungled administration of the past several years under Pat Hayden and then Lynn Swann. Because Bohn acted decisively here, and it was a surprise to people who study the USC athletic department, there is now some goodwill and there's definitely some trust that Mike Bohn is going to get this hire right. And if he gets this hire right, well, obviously, then USC can be on its way back. But the mindset here is not necessarily we are on our way back, but, Mike Bohn shows signs that maybe he actually does get it. So there's some cautious optimism, but there is an increased amount of trust that Mike Bohn can do this thing the right way. That's what people are saying. And then we'll see when he comes up with the actual hire, whether he actually hit the ball out of the park. In terms of, I know that you'll want to get the candidates that fans want. I think fans would be very, very happy with either Luke Fickell, Matt Campbell, or James Franklin. And I think they're the top three most realistic candidates. Chris Peterson's not a realistic candidate. Bob Stoops is not a realistic candidate. I think they're both done coaching for good. Should you call them? Sure. But you shouldn't be expecting a yes or even really much of any interest to even have an extended conversation. I think in some order, one way or another, Fickell, Campbell, and Franklin are the top three most realistic targets on USC's radar screen, and I think the fan base would love any of those three at the moment.
Matt Zemek, TrojansWire.com, 12:52 Eastern, here on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice. So 3:30 kick Eastern on Saturday for Dante Williams as the interim coach for the Trojans. That one's on Fox, and they're at Wazoo, Pullman, Washington, which I had no idea was basically on the Idaho border until I Google Mapped it the other day, by the way. Just offhand real quick, does Dante Williams have any shot at earning consideration for this job with a special performance the rest of the season as the interim?
No, I think his ceiling is defensive coordinator. If he wants to stay at USC, be a part of the next coaching staff, I think defensive coordinator is his ceiling. Now, he is one of the top two recruiters in the Pac-12. And interestingly enough, USC and Clay Helton got him from Oregon and Mario Cristobal. So, if Dante Williams was willing to leave Oregon for USC, that means he probably holds USC in very high regard. So if he wants to stay a part of the USC program, I think defensive coordinator is as high within the hierarchy as he could possibly be. But precisely because Clay Helton was an interim without significant head coaching experience, USC is going to want a guy with significant head coaching experience. Now, maybe it might be an elite offensive coordinator, but that would be a fallback plan. Like Joe Moorhead is an interesting fallback plan. He's not in the top tier of candidates. He would be in the second tier of candidates if Fickell, Campbell, and Franklin all say no. That would be a very interesting choice based on what Moorhead was able to do against Ohio State. But in terms of top tier candidates, it's definitely going to be someone with head coaching experience. This is why, for example, you might have heard the name Eric Bieniemy floated, because he has a former relationship with Mike Bohn when Mike Bohn was the athletic director at Colorado. Obviously, Bieniemy played there, spent time there as an assistant coach. You've heard that name floated, but because Bieniemy has no head coaching experience and because he's been an NFL guy, not a college guy over the past several years, I give it very little chance that Bieniemy is going to work his way into the mix.
I'm not trying to laugh, but your cat is killing me.
I have a cat. I have a dog. They're as long as they're not barking or making big sounds, that's what matters.
If you have a cat that barks, you've got something special, my friend.
You're doing the wrong thing, appearing on random sports shows. If you have a cat that barks,
oh man, I was trying to listen to you, and I just kept watching this tail. It looked like it was attached to the back of your earlobe. So, what type of money are we talking about here, Matt? I mean, you got Saban and Dabo and Jimbo Fisher, guys in our neck of the woods who are making $90-100 million. What type of money does Southern Cal have, which I'm assuming is plenty, and what type of money are they prepared to spend if need be?
I think you could look at as high as $9 million per year for this. And one thing about the value of this particular hire, the importance of this particular hire, is that the Pac-12 has a round of media rights in the next 2 years after 2023. And you have a new commissioner, George Kliavkoff, replacing Larry Scott. And we all know that USC being great at football is so central to the Pac-12's revenue, stature, reputation. So you have all these forces coming together, media rights, commissioner, future of the Pac-12, and USC needing to be great. So, like, George Kliavkoff is going to make sure, if there's any shred of doubt, that USC invests everything into this hire, not just in terms of its resources, in terms of its sales pitch, but the actual money. So this should be a high-end investment for USC in terms of the amount of money the head coach receives. So something in the $8 to $9 million range, I think, makes a lot of sense.
You only have a couple of minutes left here, Matt, but I would imagine as well that in this hire, you just mentioned 3 elite recruiters in addition to coaches, obviously, but that's got to be at the top of the list as far as what type of candidate they want, because Oregon, obviously on the West Coast, but over here, South Carolina, Clemson, Alabama, they're going right into California. Gamecocks took Ryan Helinski, but look what Clemson and Bama have done. They've gone in there and got the best quarterbacks out of the state and brought them back to the East Coast. Oregon comes down to L.A. County and just scoops up who they want to these days, and I can't imagine that is sitting well with Trojan fans and administration.
Yeah, and the thing is, you might be aware of this, that USC fans have had a fixation on style of play over the years, because this is, student body right, power running game. Fans hated the air raid that Graham Harrell is still using, because USC shouldn't have to resort to a gimmicky offense. But my big word of caution to USC fans is, don't worry so much about style of play. Worry about being competent. Like, you just need a competent head coach. Clay Helton was not competent. Steve Sarkisian was not competent, and he just got his butt kicked by Arkansas. And the old joke at Washington, where Sarkisian coached for several years, was that his label was 7-win Sark, and it still looks like 7-win Sark is alive and well at Texas. So you just need competence. You can get so caught in the weeds in terms of spread passing offense, triple option offense. Hey, it really doesn't matter. If you know your stuff, you know your way around a football field, that's what matters. So USC can't be too overly focused on style. It just needs to have competence, because that's what ultimately sells. USC is outside the top 15 in terms of active NFL roster representation right now. Trojans have 23 players on NFL rosters. That's like 50. That's 35 behind Alabama, but it's not even in the top 15. So like UCLA has more, Texas has more, Iowa has more. USC should always be like top 7 or thereabouts in among active NFL players, and because recruits know that Clay Helton doesn't develop talent. He's not going to develop them. You're very aware that elite quarterbacks from Southern California, they're playing for national programs. C.J. Stroud at Ohio State, DJ Uiagalelei in your state at Clemson, and then you also have Bryce Young he decommitted from USC to play for Alabama, and JT Daniels transferred out of the program to play for Georgia.
Yep.
So you need a competent coach. I don't think it's so much about style of play. Now, I would say there are exceptions to that, like Pat Fitzgerald. No quarterback's going to want to play for Pat Fitzgerald. So, like, you can cross him off the list very quickly for that reason. But in general, it's less about style of play. It's more about just knowing that the head coach of USC is going to develop you into an NFL caliber player. And so that you can go in many different directions for that. And I don't think USC fans should pin their hopes on one specific guy. It's just more about a guy who knows what he's doing. That's what we haven't had really for the past decade of coaches. You know, Lane Kiffin, he looks like a good coach right now at Ole Miss. He's definitely evolved. His time under Nick Saban, his time at Florida Atlantic, you know, that is the progression he needed to go through. But when he came to USC in 2010, after that one season at USC, he clearly wasn't ready. He was failing upward within the business. He hadn't gone through his paces and paid his dues. Now he has, and you can see he's a much better coach. But he wasn't a very good coach back in 2010. So Kiffin in 2010, Sark in 2013, and then Helton. USC just has not had ready for primetime coaches of the past 12 years since Pete Carroll left. So just having someone who's competent. I know it seems pathetic in a certain way, but that's what USC has to start with. You get a competent coach, you can build from there and restore the program.
And it's in a league that Southern Cal should never have any issues competing to win. They just shouldn't. And that's not a knock on the Pac-12. They've had some down years, certainly, but Southern Cal, even if they don't win the league, you know firsthand, and way better than we know this, they should always be in the conversation, and maybe they will be. Really fascinating stuff. You're such an easy interview because you do all the talking, and Darren and I don't have to say anything. This is great. Can we have you back soon for another update?
I would love to be your contact for USC coaching carousel updates throughout the season. I'd be happy.
You're the man. In the meantime, for folks interested in this situation and others in the Pac-12, TrojansWire.com. That's how they can find you, correct?
TrojansWire.usatoday.com, yes, and we're on Twitter at Trojans Wire. So, yeah, just make Trojans Wire your USC coaching carousel headquarters.
Oh, fantastic. Well, best wishes to the cat, and I think I see Christmas decorations back there too already, so good for you. It's September. I like that.
We keep them up around the year. My mom likes red and green.
I love it. Love it. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
There you go, Matt Zemek out there in California. Obviously, the Trojans going through quite a situation here in their coaching search. All right, got to hit a timeout. Hour one is in the books. When we return back to the East Coast and right here in town, not going very far for this one, David Shelton with the Post and Courier will tell us who is and isn't playing high school football tomorrow night right here on the JB and Goldwater show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Right here in our backyard is Motley Rice LLC, a law firm that hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for South Carolinians who were injured while traveling by plane or bus, harmed by medical drugs and devices, or burdened by dangerous auto recalls, including Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. We are honored to have Motley Rice as a sponsor for the JB and Goldwater show and the Big Gamecock Preview show.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work, and to others you probably don't think much about, stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Cloninger, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
107, final hour, Thursday afternoon, September the 16th, here on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice, motleyrice.com. If you've been affected by Takata airbags, motleyrice.com. How about medical drugs and devices? How about if you've been injured traveling by bus or by plane? All that stuff. The common folks like us sometimes don't know where to go, but we're telling you right now, if you've had these issues, Motley Rice headquartered in the Lowcountry, but it's a national firm and owned, of course, by Joe Rice, motleyrice.com. For more information, find them there. And you can always head to stokesvw.com as well to drive away in an all-new Stokes Volkswagen Atlas for your tailgate this fall. JB and Darren and David Shelton with the Post and Courier here to tell us once again who's playing. This should just be a new segment that we do with David. Who's in and who's out on Friday night in high school football? What's up, man?
Hey guys, how's it going? Good afternoon.
So who's in and who's out?
There aren't too many cancellations this week, are there?
I don't think so.
No, Baptist Hill is looking for a game. Cross is still not yet to play a game. They are going to play next week, supposedly. But I can't think of anyone else right off the top of my head. I know North Charleston hasn't played, but they're going to play supposedly tomorrow. Anything can happen. It's only Thursday, but there are actually in the Tri-County area, there are some really good matchups, really, traditional games like Summerville, Berkeley.
Yep.
That really hasn't got a lot of play because of the way the seasons went, and Summerville's played one game and Berkeley's played one game, and they both have not played in a couple of weeks. So, but it's still Summerville, Berkeley, and it's the oldest rivalry in the Lowcountry. So they're going to get together, and Summerville's playing on one day of practice today, and Berkeley's coming off of they didn't get to play last week, so they had to go on a little quarantine thing, and Fort Dorchester and Wando are going to play tomorrow. Fort Dorchester's practicing today and going to play tomorrow. And Wando's just coming off quarantine as well. So that could be an interesting matchup. I don't want to break Jamie's heart, but this is a tall task for the Warriors.
Yeah, they're not. They're not winning this one 75-0.
Maybe not.
Well, Jamie, if they do, I will buy you a Volkswagen Atlas.
Hey,
so I have a question about the game though, because Fort Dorchester had a mandatory like virtual day because of some power outage or something. Are they still able to practice and play tomorrow?
I was told they were able to practice this morning, and they're going to practice this afternoon, and then they're going to play tomorrow.
Right.
The emergency e-learning thing, virtual thing, was because there was no power at the school, and so it wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't a scheduled day off or virtual learning day. So, that'll be interesting. There are two different thoughts on this. Wow, you're going to be off for 10 days and you're going to practice one day and play a football game. Does that sound kind of weird, kind of dangerous? And then the other side of that argument is they've been practicing since July 31st. They had a week off, which normally during the season you do have a week off, but you continue to practice. According to the Prad at Ford and Rafferty at Somerville and Shane Fiddler at Ashley Ridge, who's in that district as well, they've been on their kids. They're doing Zoom conditioning where coaches can actually watch the kids do their conditioning and work out and things like that. They've been doing the meetings about preparing, for the upcoming opponent, that kind of thing. The only thing they haven't done is beat up on each other, and they won't do that today in practice. This won't be one of those full contact deals because you got to play tomorrow. There was some concern on Monday that they're not going to be able to play because of the rules. The I can't say that word. I'd never have been able to say that word. That word.
Acclimatization.
I checked with the high school league, and really the only time that's necessary is at the beginning of a season. Once you've completed it one time, you don't have to go through it if you have time off. So that's why they are allowed to play. Now, some districts, I remember during the floods, whatever year that was when we had all that rain and we had all those games missed in Horry County, when they were able to come back, the district mandated 3 days of practice before they could play. So that a district can do that. They can supersede that. Again, like we said, since day one, every district is their own, entity, their own state, so to speak. And they can do what they want. And the high school league really can't do a whole lot about it. So Dorchester 2 did not mandate that 3-day thing. So, and another team, I tell you, Woodland has yet to play a game. They're in District 4 in Dorchester County. They've started practice. They're going to play tomorrow. And who do they get in their first game?
Yeah, Abbeville.
Yeah. Wow.
Yikes.
The powerhouse in 2A, one of the elite programs in all of South Carolina, defending state champs. They're coming to Woodland, and they're going to play at 6:00 tomorrow night. But that is a tough bone to chew in the first game, having not played a game, and Abbeville's playing game 4.
Yeah, I saw that on the schedule and I didn't realize Woodland hadn't played a game and thought, oh man, that just sucks, to be honest with you. But you know what?
Woodland was good last year, and Abbeville beat the brakes off them. So and Abbeville is the defending state champ, but Woodland was really good last year and just had their way with Woodland. So I don't know what to expect tomorrow night.
It is across the state, David. It is a pretty good night for football, not just here in the Low Country. I mean, up in the Midlands, you got Brooklyn, Casey, and Chapin. They're undefeated. Saluda won the state championship less than 2 years ago. They're 3-0 to start the season, and they welcome Raven County from Georgia, who's 2-1. Their quarterback is Gunnar Stockton, who was originally committed to South Carolina, and now, of course, is headed to Athens to play for the Dogs. So you got, there was one in the upstate that had caught my eye too. I find that Sumter's got to go to St. James. St. James is 3-0, and the Sumter Gamecocks are 2-1. That's an interesting one. But this one caught my eye here locally. Just an old Goose Creek matchup up there between the Gators and Stratford. 1-0 Knights, 2-1 Goose Creek tomorrow night at 7:30. You gonna be at that one? Who's going to that one?
I think Rob Gant is going to that one. And they moved this game. This game was actually scheduled for week 10.
Right.
That's the city rivalry. They wait till the end of the year and play. And both schools had an open date and said, why don't we play this week? And then that way we know we get the game in.
Right.
And then worry about week 10. They can fill in a game. So they kind of decided last week they're going to play it this week, which is cool. And another interesting matchup, the Fighting Eric Bendigs.
Yeah, baby.
Women, they're going to play at Hanahan, and this will be Philip Simmons' toughest opponent. I mean, this will, they're off to a great start, and they're really playing with a lot of confidence and a lot of moxie right now. But Hanahan will be a very big challenge for the Iron Horses. I'll be at that game. I'm looking forward to seeing, how Philip Simmons responds to that. And Hanahan coming off an overtime loss to Stratford by 1 point last week. They're probably, a little angry. So I really, and this game could be a developing, budding rivalry, because you remember when Cainhoy closed down way back in the 90s, all those kids that are over there on the Philip Simmons side were at Hanahan.
Right.
Hanahan benefited, and really Jeff Cruz, had tremendous seasons at Hanahan. Well, then they built Philip Simmons and took all those kids back. So there is a little bit of now these kids are not, Philip Simmons kids are now in their 5th year, so they never played at Hanahan. But just the fact that they used to all be together, it could be a little rivalry that builds over the coming years.
Absolutely. I mean, Philip Simmons is 4-0, and Hanahan is 1-1. But you're right. Bendig and those guys, they hadn't seen anybody as good as the Hawks yet. So go get them. Hold on, I got to get a pick in here. Late turnover win for Philip Simmons, 5-0. They're feeling the flow in Hanahan amongst the oak trees and all that ugly orange and blue and all that over there. The Fighting Bendigs get a big win. How about the
Philip Simmons is ranked 8th in Class 2A in the state, which they've obviously, and I understand how the rank. I'm part of the panel, and you have to reward teams that are undefeated at this point. But a win this week would really open some eyes. I think some people are waiting to see, Bishop England's down, Georgetown's down, Waccama's down, and who else did they beat?
They beat
collegiate in there, or academic magnet. There you go.
Military,
yeah. So those programs are down right now, and I'm not taking anything away. I mean, you still got to play the game. You got to win the game. You play Eastern Illinois, you got to win the game. You play South Carolina State, you got to win the game. But this will be a bigger challenge, and it'll be interesting to see how those kids respond. They'll be excited because there's a lot of excitement going on over there right now. But this will be a big challenge.
They had the reason I know this is because I happened to be there. They had adversity last week, right? I mean, they were down 2 scores. They're now 4-0. They'd never had 4 wins in a season. This is their 4th season. I mean, Bendig's got something over there.
Yeah. And I, when I saw that score when Bishop England was up by 2 scores on Twitter last week, I was like, okay, well, now, good for Bishop England, and maybe Philip Simmons is coming back down to earth. And then next thing I know, they end up winning the game by 9 or 10 or whatever it was.
They had the ball the entire 3rd quarter. I lost track of the drive. The drive went about 18 to 20 plays in that range. It was virtually the entire 3rd quarter, and they put the game away with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy moly. I didn't see that. God, I bet that was fun to call. What Sorry, guys. How about
run left, run right, run left, run right?
Dude, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. We had so many technical issues last week that I really don't even remember the game. All I remember is electricity shooting into my ears. That's
you were a BE, right?
Philip Simmons, but it's not their fault at all.
That game was at Philip Simmons?
Yeah.
I was about to say, if you're a BE, you just blame that on Darnell. Get Darnell's rear end out there.
That's all. We said hello.
You tell Mike, hey, look, Mike, fix it. Figure it out, okay? Get out of the gym and quit worrying about your hair and get in here and fix my electrical problems. All right. How about this one? OCA is off to a rough start. They're 1-3, but they're about to be 1-4 because they got 4-0 Beaufort coming to town tomorrow night. This is a tall task for Joe Call's guys.
Yeah, this might be their last loss for the regular season. I mean, Hanahan will probably be a very competitive challenge, but their region is not strong.
Mm-hmm.
But they will have seen a ranked team in Great Collegiate. First, they started with Butler, North Carolina, with no preparation, and Butler is a Class 4A state title contender year in and year out. Then they played a ranked Great Collegiate team, which is number 2 in 2A. Then they were supposed to play Goose Creek, but they didn't get to play Goose Creek. So imagine if they'd have played Goose Creek in this schedule. Then who was the next game they played?
C.E. Murray.
C.E. Murray, which is their only win.
Yeah, they're terrible. And then they lost to Myrtle Beach.
Mm-hmm. Last week.
Yeah, they lost to Myrtle Beach. I was there, and Myrtle Beach is ranked 3 in 4A. Buford is ranked, I think, 6 in 4A this week. And, Joe Call says, he wants to play. I'll give him credit, man. They're playing the schedule, but nobody, with all the preseason hype, he included, I didn't see 1-4. But Buford is a very solid, well-coached, physical football team. Oceanside's got some opportunity in this game, but they got to get that running game going. They got that big offensive line, and it's probably one of the best units overall in the Low Country. And they have some success running, but they don't really look to run that. They got to run the football. And Buford's going to run the football. You better guarantee it. And but Oceanside, got to get that running game going. They really didn't have much. They had a little bit of success against Myrtle Beach, but some of it was quarterback scrambles with positive yardage. But they got a really good back in Vaughn Blue, and in my mind, I think he needs to get about 20 to 25 touches, and because he's a good football player, and they got that big offensive line. So, if they could run the football tomorrow night and kind of control the game a little bit, I would give them a shot to win this. It would be an upset, but it wouldn't be a monumental upset. But because Buford's undefeated, but I give them a shot. But I just think they need to get that running game going a little bit.
David Shelton, Post and Courier, 123 on a Thursday afternoon. Elsewhere across the state, some of the other big and very interesting matchups. You got 2-2 Burns on the road at undefeated Gaffney tomorrow night. How about Page Wofford and Northwestern? They're 3-1. They're going to hit the road for Greenville, who's undefeated at 4-0. That'll be an interesting.
Going to be a really good game. That's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I got to go with Page Wofford though. They win 78-0 over Greenville. 78, 75.
It might be 78-76, but it ain't gonna be 78-0. I can promise.
No.
That would be a long game.
That'd be a fun one to call. AC Flora, of course, who won the state championship last year. Their quarterbacks are coached by Perry Orth. They're 2-0, and they got to go to 3-1 Camden tomorrow night. Do have a question we got on Twitter, David, and I don't know if you know a whole lot about them, but Don wants to know what you think of Silver Bluff. Do you know anything about Silver Bluff thus far?
Yeah. They're really good, really athletic. They've been kind of down, and they've been building with this young group. They've got I want to say he's a sophomore. I want to say his last name's Dunbar, but I might be wrong. But I heard that he is a absolute stud, and he is going to be a major prospect but they got good athletes. They've got really good coaching staff. You know, their guys are Silver Bluff graduates. And D'Angelo Bryant is, you know, really good football coach, and they got it going on right now. They're the, you know, Barnwell's in that region, and, you know, Barnwell's kind of run things in that region, but Silver Bluff's the team to beat. I mean, they're in the lower state. I would say they might be the favorite in 2A in the lower state to come out of that and then eventually lose to Abbeville, but or Great Collegiate. But Silver Bluff's legit. Yeah, they're a good football team.
BE 0-4, maybe staring 0-5 in the face. They've got Timberland this weekend. Irmo. Irmo's in town to take on James Island. That's an interesting matchup. What do we know about that one?
That's a cancellation. That's
okay. See,
James Island.
I knew it. I knew we couldn't get through this.
Almost. You got to the very end until you hit one.
How about Dutch Fork?
I think they did that yesterday. I think COVID. They got protocol issues at James Island, so they had to cancel that.
How about Dutch Fork and Greenwood? Are they playing?
Yep.
Okay.
That'll be a really good game. Greenwood's got a good football team, and they're physical on defense.
Yeah.
That you're right. I mean, around the state, you know, you mentioned Burns Gaffney, and normally that's like, you know, the marquee game, but Burns is coming off a loss to Westside where they gave up, I think, 63 points, which I think is the most Burns has ever allowed. They scored like 62, I think, or 60. I can't remember the final score. Both teams were in the 60s. I know that. But their defense just had a awful night. And, you know, going to Gaffney against that offense is not a promising prospect, but it is Burns Gaffney, and you know Burns will be ready to play. But Gaffney's really good. Gaffney, they beat Mallard Creek last week very easily, and Mallard Creek in North Carolina is a powerhouse traditionally. And Gaffney had no problem beating them last week.
Wow. Cane Bay and West Ashley, they're still planning on playing tomorrow, as far as you know, right?
Yeah. I think that'll be an interesting game. West Ashley's 0-2. Cane Bay's got a 2-1 record, and both teams like to run the football. Probably a really quick game. But West Ashley's kind of hitting that period now where they need a win. You know, that's another team we kind of built up in the preseason, and they're going to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost to Goose Creek, and they had a 2-touchdown lead, and then Beaufort. We just talked about Beaufort, so. This is a game West Ashley needs to win. Cane Bay's a good, solid football team, but this is a game that if West Ashley is for real, they need to win this game.
Did I miss something? Is Ashley Ridge playing tomorrow night?
No, they are going to play Saturday at Lexington. Noon game on Saturday.
Okay, that's why they're in the top 10.
They added. And they were able to fix it out for Saturday.
So Ashley Ridge, as far as I know, I'm pretty sure I saw this correctly a couple days ago. They're ranked in the 5A top 10 at number 9. Is that correct?
Yeah, and kind of like Philip Simmons, you know, you reward the undefeated, but they really haven't played a tough schedule. You know, it'll get tougher as it goes, and Lexington will be quite a challenge. Now, I will say Ashley Ridge on defense is as good as anybody.
Yeah, they're really good.
Offensively, they're still not clicking all the way, but on that defense, I mean, they've got some linebackers. They got Ledford, Garland, and Wilson, all juniors, and they're all nice looking kids, good athletes, and they're making a lot of tackles. And this will be a good challenge for them on the road at Lexington, a noon game with only a couple of practices. You know, we'll see how they respond to that.
Yeah, they've only given up 1 touchdown in 2 games this year, Ashley Ridge. So good for Shane Fiddler, who is just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful dude, and he's the head coach out there. Do you get Ashley Ridge this year on TV, Darren? Can you give us a hint on that?
The schedule's out. I don't know it though, but it's public. You can Google it, or I can Google it. I don't even know who we have next week. I just know that tomorrow it's Buford and Oceanside.
I don't know why you tell the play-by-play guy. Who cares?
But now, I'll figure it out next week. I got to worry about the bridge run next week too.
Oh, sweet Jesus!
Are you running it?
No, I'm going to be in a car talking about it. I'm calling it.
I keep forgetting about that.
I mean, I literally got weak in the knees when you said this, and I was like, "There's no way Darren Goldwater's running the bridge."
No.
I don't even like to drive over that thing. I know Darren doesn't either. But here's the kicker with all of that, David. As you well know, I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but it's true. You better learn how to say all those Kenyan names, because you really don't want to screw up the name of the guy that's going to win the race. You get that, right?
He's going to win.
Well, first of all, the prep so far has been, let's say, minimal, but we're working on getting names, which we don't have yet, and the bib numbers, which we don't have yet. So once we get that, then we can start learning some names, and then I can figure out
how. On the radio?
No, it's either on Channel 4 or My TV Charleston. It's one of those two. It could very well be on Channel 4. I'm not sure.
And you're on the other side of the bridge, so you're just going back and forth in a car?
I don't know. I'm in what I believe is the pace car, I think.
So, they should make you the pace runner.
No.
Make you the pace runner.
No, not if you want the race to finish. You don't want me to be the pace runner.
They give you about a mile head start and say follow that guy.
Oh, dude, they'd beat me. They'd crush me with a mile head start. Crush me,
dude. You're not. This is going to be fun, right? Like, you're not being serious about this. That you're going to call like the goofballs running in the strange outfits and the guy throwing up over the bridge and stuff like that, right?
If that happens, then I hope so. But no. This is serious, right? I mean, because to these folks, yeah, we can laugh, but to the winners, to that flight, like this does matter. So the call of it will be very quick. We're only doing like the lead pack. We're not.
Oh, this guy here, Ron Smith, he's in 28,000th place.
No. We're not going that deep here. We're
he runs with his left foot first.
But now the right. It's amazing how that happens.
Oh, God. David, I could do this all day. I really like his form. He's going with the left foot and then a right. His arms, they're up and down. This is great stuff.
This guy is definitely a professional runner.
These guys are fast.
Oh, God.
I would be the guy if I ran the race. Someone once said, Shelton, why don't you run the bridge? And I'm like, because I can drive it. It's the same thing with an airplane. Why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane with a parachute on when you can land and walk down the stairs? But if I ran the bridge, I'd be the guy about a mile in that would be leaning over, puking my guts out.
Oh, I don't think I'd make it a mile.
Then I would latch on to Darren's pace car and finish the race in the back seat.
What type of car is this going to be?
Dude, okay. I don't know anything, as we can tell from this conversation.
Dude, they're about to screw you big time.
We have I've got a production meeting on Monday. They've already had a couple of them.
Is Iceberg going to be out there too?
I'm sure he'll be covering it somehow. This will be only the second time I've ever been at the bridge run in 20 years living down here.
Yeah.
I generally avoid
I've never been.
Yeah.
I've never been.
I went over.
I am looking forward to it. Like, genuinely, I will have fun. It's something I've never done, so it's a new little challenge. I'll have fun with it, and then move on.
I'll be in Columbia getting ready for football. Have fun, dude.
Now, is it this weekend or next weekend?
Next Saturday.
God.
Next Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we let you run here, throw the quick curveball at you. Ed asked if you had a top 5 Charleston High School volleyball rankings. I'm assuming Wando's number 1.
Wando is number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then 5 would probably be seriously.
Well, what about Porter Gap?
It rarely changes from year to year. You go Wando, Porter-Gaud, Bishop England. You could throw James Island in the mix. They're pretty good. Lucy Beckham is going to be pretty good this year. Ashley Hall is traditionally, one of the better teams. it is not a deep. I mean, it'd be really hard to do a top 10 because, but I will say that the top teams are as good as any team in their classification in the state. I mean, Portugal's a consistent champion or runner-up. Wando is Wando. Bishop England, well, they won 18 years in a row. So they're pretty good. Ashley Hall has 12 state titles. James Island and Lucy Beckham are right there in the 4 or 5 range. Lucy Beckham is a new school, but having a year under them now and a lot of underclassmen, they're going to challenge with James Island in that 4A region. But yeah, it's pretty much Wando, Portugal, Bishop England, and then you throw Ashley Hall and those other 2 schools in that mix.
I have one nugget of information on this.
Wando.
No, it's not. It's a shout out to Mariana Singletary, who was just named the top volleyball player either in the state or in her class in the state, and she is heading to Texas. I think she's only going to be a junior now, and she's going to head to Texas and then end up playing in the SEC. So shout out to her because we have friends with that family.
Yeah, and she's 6'4", and she's a really good player.
Yes,
and
she could have gone anywhere.
I forgot one. I did forget Oceanside Collegiate, and I know somebody's going to probably shoot me for that. I was totally drawing a blank. But Oceanside Collegiate has played for state titles the last 3 years. They haven't won it, but they're in that mix in the top 5. They would probably be 3 or 4 in that list. So I don't want to make anybody mad, but they are a really good volleyball program. They get a lot of their, feeder from Wando, kids that transfer from Wando, which is also one of the best programs in the state. But I did want to mention Oceanside, but you are right. Mariana Singletary is a phenomenal volleyball player. And I had the pleasure of naming her Player of the Year last year in the Low Country, and I did a feature, and she is a wonderful human being, just a bright, funny young lady, just a really all-around good person and good player, very gracious and really a great sense of humor. I mean, we laugh. My brother lives in Austin, and she's going to the University of Texas, so I was telling her about my experiences when I visit there and telling her all the places she had to go see, and we had a really great conversation. But just a wonderful personality. If you ever got to meet her, you would not know that she is one of the best in the country. I mean, she's just very humble and just a very great teammate. And they got another player, I think is related to you, Jamie, Alex Hariri.
Yeah, that's my cousin.
Is she related to you? Yeah. Really good player. She's those 2 are top dogs there at Portugal.
Yeah, Alex is she's talked a lot about the Singletary girl, and they're both really good. Alex, to brag on that part of my family, Alex's mom, Kristen, was a star at Bishop England back in the early 90s, volleyball and basketball. And she went on and played basketball at the College of Charleston, but she was the Low Country's Female Athlete of the Year her senior year at BE. And then, of course, she ended up going to college at the College of Charleston, ended up moving to California, getting married, and then moved back a couple of years ago. And now Alex is one of the stars over at Porter Goud. So we're very proud of them in our family.
Nice.
Yeah. So there you go.
I did not know that. What was her name? Her last name?
Talking about my cousin, Kristen Connell. Kristen Connell. It's obviously.
Wow! Oh, I remember her. Oh, I did not realize that.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
You've covered this high school
athlete.
You've covered since like 1900. Of course you remember.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she could play. Yeah. They still have a bunch of that stuff framed over at my aunt's house. It's fun to go in there and read it sometimes. 30-something years ago, pretty neat. But yeah, she could. You're right. She could play.
You didn't have to bring that up, man. I am old. Wow. I have been doing this way too long.
But you're good at it. That's why we like you on here. You make us better.
You've been doing it a long time when you get random text or messages on Twitter from people you don't know that say, hey, what was that quarterback's name on the 1989 Berkeley, blah, blah, blah. And then I reply in like 10 seconds and they go, okay, thanks. And I'm like, Well, I'm just like Wikipedia. I mean, I was like, man, how did I even know that? But
Wikipedia.
It's been my life.
Well, you do a damn good job. We really, I mean, it's one of my favorite segments is having you on to talk about all the young men and young women in our area and what they get to do out there in their respective sports. Thank you so much. Long segment.
I appreciate it.
Always, yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful weekend. I know you'll be eating plenty of mac and cheese, not Kraft, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, man. Y'all take care.
Later.
Yeah, David Shelton with the Post and Courier. All right, time for our final time out of the afternoon when we return about 15 minutes with Scott Glaze, a final look at the Ryder Cup set to go next week right here on the JB and Goldwater show driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Hopefully, you won't ever need legal help for a catastrophic injury or health issues from a medical drug or device. But if you or a loved one suffers injury or loss, Motley Rice LLC is a nationally recognized law firm that is right here in Mount Pleasant at 28 Ridgeside Boulevard. Thank you, Motley Rice, for sponsoring the JB and Goldwater show and the Big Gamecock Preview show. Visit motleyrice.com for more. motleyrice.com.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity financed a new loan, subject to lender approval.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, Park West.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and awesome.
Final 15 minutes or so on a Thursday afternoon. Hit us up on the Share Healthcare text or chat lines if you have a question to pass along to Scott Glaze, sharehealthcare.com. Don't get stuck with health bills that you can't afford, medical bills you can't afford. You need to head to Share Healthcare, and they'll tell you how you can afford them with Share Healthcare. All right, we love Scott Glaze around here. We can afford to have him every week because he is the best there is at talking golf. And next week, it's the Ryder Cup. So we're going to get a little bit of a preview on that before we let Scott run off to the course. You have any lessons today? What are you doing today? You just hanging out, or?
Man, I got I got a long to-do list. We're staying busy, which is it's great. Actually, no lessons today. But
cutting grass.
Yeah. Hey, if need be, I'll hop up on that mower if need be. I've done it before.
Do me a favor. Put this in somewhere in y'all's little notes out there. So in about best case scenario, 60 years when I retire and I'm somewhere around 95. When I retire, all I want to do is cut grass on a riding mower for baseball fields and golf courses. So can you put me on the list to be a retiree that just cuts grass?
Perfect. Well, hold on to your resume for sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I can manicure a baseball field. I can make a baseball field look pretty sharp pretty quickly. I got all the little tricks. I don't know all the golf course tricks. You had to teach me all that stuff.
I mean, virtually the same. Mowers probably a little bit bigger. We got some big old mowers, especially to mow rough and fairway and stuff like that. There's some little nuances in terms of mowing the greens there. Every day we mow them in a different direction so that the grass, so you kind of shock the grass. It doesn't start growing just in one way. Like last weekend with our club championship, and we're really trying to speed these things up. We'll double cut them in two different directions one day. And it's nice. You go out there very early in the morning. I mean, with the homeowners association for Stono Ferry, we don't get started as early as you could, but it is nice to be out there early in the morning for those guys, and something kind of spiritual about being on, like you said, a baseball field or a golf course like that.
Totally agree, dude. That was back when I used to coach, because I would get so frustrated sometimes with the kids. Even though I loved them, they were trying so hard. I mean, we had good players. I mean, I coached a lot of kids who played college baseball, but the best part about being on a baseball field for me was just cutting grass and taking care of it, man. I was in my zone. All right, hey, let's get to the drama of the week. We knew it was coming. Something was going to happen, right? I didn't expect it to be in this form, but something was going to happen, Scotty. And it's because of Brooke Koepka's comments to Golf Week, or whoever it was he talked to. Golf Digest, I think it was. Koepka's, here's one of the quotes in talking about the Ryder Cup. It's tough. There are times where I'm like, I won my match. I did my job. What do you want from me? I know how to take responsibility for the shots I hit every week. Now somebody else hit a bad shot and left me in a bad spot, and I know this hole is a loss. That's new, and you have to change the way you think about things. You go from an individual sport all the time to a team sport 1 week a year. It's so far from my normal routine. Paul Azinger ain't happy. There's others who aren't happy. Azinger said, relinquish your spot then. If you're too good to play here, then give up your spot. Of course, he hasn't done that, but I saw somebody tweet a couple of days ago, I can't remember who it was, that said, maybe this is the problem with the U.S. Ryder Cup team. They all play for themselves and not for that flag that flies on the front of their jerseys. What do you think about his comments, and how's this going to play out?
I didn't love his comments. I did, however, find it kind of similar to when you get a text message from somebody that you kind of read in a certain way and you think, gosh, what did they mean by that? And they had a totally different tone than maybe what they actually meant. That could be the case with Brooks. He might have said some of that tongue in cheek, but we don't know. It's a printed quote. There's no it's not a press conference. He's not saying it in front of people. So we have to take it for strictly what it's worth. But yeah, I think that's why the Europeans have gotten the better of the Americans over the course of the last 10 years plus in the Ryder Cup, is that they embrace this. This is fun for them. They love the camaraderie and the fact that golf for 1 week out of the year is molded into this ultimate team match. It's a biannual competition. It's something so special in the game and such a big feather to put in your cap to be on a Ryder Cup team, whether you're qualifying for Team Europe or Team USA. And they embrace this, and they don't make excuses for anything. I mean, gosh, I'm trying to think in my head of the last time I heard an excuse coming from a European Ryder Cup player in terms of format or who they were paired with or, the team aspect.
I think it's personal. I think they take it personal.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, they're always the underdogs, so that they always have that chip on their shoulder. It does go back to these guys when they play the European circuit. They are all closer to each other than over here in the States, where guys they're their own entity. They are, they have themselves and their swing coach and their trainer, and they're this and they're that, and they're their own team type deal. And they're not really going out to dinner with other guys and hanging out with other guys off the golf course. The European guys do that regularly, whether it's over in Europe or whether it's the contingent that plays here in the States. So, Brooks also made a lot of interesting comments in that interview, not necessarily about the Ryder Cup. I just don't necessarily subscribe to necessarily always having to say exactly what you feel, but maybe that is how he feels in regards to the Ryder Cup. And I do kind of agree with Paul Azinger. If you don't care, you don't want to be on this team, relinquish the spot. There's somebody, Kevin Na would love to be on this team. I mean, he was campaigning hard for himself to be a captain's pick. One of the hottest players, American players right now, didn't get picked. And I would much rather, as a fan, want to see guys that really, really want to be there. It just doesn't seem like Brooks wants to be there.
Yeah, stop there for a second. Like, isn't that part of the Ryder Cup? I mean, when I picture the Ryder Cup, I always picture, even though I was a little kid, but we've seen it so many times, the War by the Shore right here, just the energy of the American team and the camaraderie. Like I picture, like, that's what we want. Like, we want to try to find a way to see football or baseball or basketball in golf, like the team aspect, the getting fired up and high-fiving and talking trash. And if you have a guy out there who's just kind of, I'm just Pac-Man Jonesing himself around the ballpark. I'm just here, whoever that was, Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I won't get fined. It's kind of boring to me. There's where's the energy and the passion in that for the fan base, which is the United States? I'm with you. If you don't have it, replace it. I don't know how you fix it.
I don't know how you fix it either. I think that's just who Brooks Koepka is, and so be it. I mean, I don't subscribe necessarily to that type of demeanor and that type of attitude. I mean, yeah, we want to see the passion in the Ryder Cup. That's what's so cool about it, is that you don't see that. We don't see team golf. We see it once a year, Ryder Cup, President's Cup. It's the only time we see team golf where you can bond together, play for your country. And yeah, it's I totally lost my train of thought where I was going there with Brooks, but we
at least we're not talking about Patrick Reed and the problems he will cause on the team, because we just don't even have to talk about him on the team.
True. And I think at least we get that passion from Patrick Reed, though.
True.
I mean, in the past, there's been friction on who he's been paired with, and really, that narrative's getting old. I hope that we can get past that. I have no clue who they're going to pair Brooks Koepka with in the 4-ball and foursomes, but hopefully we can get past this fact that we need to have pods, and we got to have guys that like each other, hang out with each other all week, and then play together. And why can't we just unify for one weekend? And I mean, this is such a good team. All 12 of these guys are in the top 21 in the official world golf rankings. It's kind of unprecedented. The state of American golf is great right now, yet we go into a Ryder Cup on American soil where we should dominate, and there are questions because guys can't buy into what the Ryder Cup stands for and the purity of it, and that's a shame.
All right, so of this team, they're playing at Whistling Straits beginning next Friday. So, and you mentioned last week that by rankings-wise, the best team ever on paper put together by the Americans. But they're playing at Whistling Straits. Do you know of this group of Americans? I mean, and the Europeans as well. Lump everybody into the conversation. Who's had the most success on that course?
We've had a couple of PGA championships at Whistling Straits. It's not going to be your typical Ryder Cup style golf course. It's a beautiful golf course. It's right on one of the Great Lakes there up in Wisconsin, Kohler, Wisconsin. I had a stat, no course in 2015. The last time we played at Whistling Straits was in 2015, PGA Championship won by Jason Day. And it put the biggest premium on driving distance than any other course played on the PGA Tour in 2015. So the U.S. has that going for them. 8 of the 12 players on the team this year ranked in the top 50 on tour in driving distance, and every single player except one was at least better than tour average driving distance. That one player was Colin Morikawa, and we've talked at length about what a great iron player he is and how he can make that up. So Whistling Straits should play into the hands of the Americans. What I think is fun about the Ryder Cup is that you do have a little bit of a home field advantage, and the U.S. can dictate how this golf course is going to be set up. We saw them do that when it was at Hazeltine several years ago. They set it up to be a bomber's paradise. They set the conditions of the golf course up so that the guys could bomb it out there, kind of play that bomb and gouge type game that so many guys do on the American team. We saw now 3 years ago in 2018 in Paris, where they played a golf course that was very tight, short, narrow, lots of dog legs, basically taking the advantage of the driver out of the hands of the Americans. So at least they have that going for them, is that this will be a golf course that's set up to really put an emphasis on driving the golf ball well and driving the golf ball far. And we know the American team can do that. When you look at the European team, you have some guys that are a little below average in terms of driving distance, such as Paul Casey, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood. Let's see, Ian Poulter. Those guys are not necessarily known as bombers of the golf ball. Of course, they do have some big guns still on their team, with Rory McIlroy, Victor Hovland, John Rahm. Yeah. Those guys can really move it out there. So it's going to be I don't know if it's going to be the best course we've seen for a Ryder Cup. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great on TV. That's what Whistling Straits is. It's great in person. Everyone that I know that's played that golf course has absolutely loved it. I don't know if it'll be the best contest or course to hold such a contest, but it will be set up in the Americans' favor.
When will we find out the schedule?
So they will play next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday, they start in the morning.
Matchups. Excuse me.
I think they play foursomes in the morning, 4-ball in the afternoon, both days. So in foursomes, that is alternate shot. So that is
right.
JB, if you and I are partners, you hit the tee shot, I hit the second shot, you hit the third shot, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And that continues throughout the whole round. 4-ball is as it's named, there are 4 balls in play. So it's a best ball. So if you and I are playing the first hole and you make a 4 and I make a 3, then the best ball in our group is a 3, and that's what we count then towards the other team. So if they make a 4, we win the hole to go 1 up. And then Sunday, they will play just 18 holes of singles matches, just straight head-to-head match play. We will find out on Thursday, probably Thursday afternoon, what the lineups are, what the matches are going to be for Friday morning, what they're going to trot out there. There are 4 guys that will sit out every session until singles. All players must play in singles, all 12. But I think we have 8 players at a time that play foursomes and 4-ball. So there is a lot of strategy. That's why we have these captains and vice captains. There's strategy that involves putting these guys together, putting really good combos together, who to rest when, who might be hot to keep them out there. Rory McIlroy has played in all 5 sessions. I think his last 5 Ryder Cups. And we see, speaking of great combos and teammates, we saw Francesco Molinari and Tommy Fleetwood play all 5 sessions in 2018 in Paris and won every single one. And they didn't have a single match. In their 4 matches, they didn't have a single match to make the 18th hole. So there is a lot of strategy involved, and hopefully you can find a dynamic duo like that can catch fire and really just be a catalyst for your team. The Europeans were great at that back in the day, and one of my favorite names of all time, they had Sevi Ballesteros and Jose Maria Olazabal, the 2 Spaniards that they called the Spanish Armada, whenever they would team up in the Ryder Cup. And they were tough to beat.
Well, hopefully next week, by the time we talk to you, they'll have all these matchups and the complete schedule out, and then you can just tell us exactly what's going to happen, and no one will need to watch this thing Friday through Sunday. But Scott, we'll leave it there. StoneO'FerryGolf.com to book your tee times. I got news for everybody. If you're a Carolina fan, it's a 7:00 kick Saturday night, so you got time to play golf. Stone O'Ferry Golf in beautiful Hollywood, South Carolina. You can always book your tee times and your lessons there. And whatever you do, make sure that you get a big, juicy wiener for your golf cart ride. Hot dog is what they call them. Scott, thanks, man. I really can't wait for the Ryder Cup next weekend. Brilliant stuff as always.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's going to be it's always great excuse to don the red, white, and blue. But it'll be exciting, and excited to dive into it more next week.
And Bryson DeChambeau has calluses on his hands. He's in big trouble, he says. You don't understand how hard it is to hit the golf ball in this drive competition. Jesus. What is wrong with these guys? Just play golf. The Europeans aren't bitching about anything. Shut up and play the sport.
Exactly.
Both of you. It's enough.
Some prima donnas.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Thank you, Scott Glaze, Stone O'Ferry Golf on the banks of the Stono River in the original, the only, and the beautiful Hollywood, South Carolina.
I'll say this. We didn't get it in with Scott. Norm Macdonald, who passed away, one of the funniest guys, I'm sure you agree, like of all time.
Ever.
Avid golf fan. Talked about it often on Twitter. Was scheduled to be an analyst in the future as well. Talked about it on some podcasts as well. Very much a factor in golf coverage was Norm Macdonald.
He was so funny. He was Saturday Night Live instantly took a dive when he was gone, and they haven't recovered. It's National Guacamole Day. It's National Working Parents Day. All you working parents, enjoy some guacamole. Thanks to Scott Glaze, David Shelton, Matt Zemek with TrojansWire.com. It's a brilliant report there, and David Cloninger. Full day here, full day tomorrow. The big Gamecock preview show tomorrow. Rafael Esparza on your betting tips. All of it on the JB and Goldwater Show at noon.